itu payah. Baca sidang. Baca. Berdikat. Umat pasir. Enggak anda. Yusuf. Benar-benar boleh dia payah. Cek.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن كثيرا من الأحبار والرهبان ليأكلون أموال الناس بالباطل ويصدون عن سبيل الله والذين يكنزون الذهب والفضة ولا ينفقونها في سبيل الله فبشرهم بعذاب أليم يوم يحمى عليها في نار جهنم فتكوى بها جباههم وجنوبهم وظهورهم هذا ما كنزتم لأنفسكم فذوقوا ما كنتم تكنزون صدق الله العظيم. The Quran Kareem addresses humanity sometimes at large, Ya ayyuhan nas. Sometimes Ahlul Iman, people who have Iman, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Sometimes the evils and wrongs of entire groups are spoken of. Sometimes individuals, Tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tab. And sometimes specific fraternities, and sometimes from those that passed, those that came before. Now what's the hikmah, or what's one hikmah and wisdom in this? That why speak of those that did what they did and they're gone, they're gone. So why speak of them? Shah Waliullah Muhammad al-Dihlui rahimahullah, in his Al-Fawz al-Kabir, short treatise on the principles of Tafseer. So he has this discussion, that why mention the wrongdoings of the ulama of the Banu Israel, for example, which is being discussed over here. So the reason or the hikmah behind this, or one of them, is that the ulama of this ummah, they should not fall into those groups. If speaking about the general ummah of the past, the general ummahs, nations of the past, speaking of those communities, so today's community, the Muslim community today, they shouldn't fall into the same problems. This is called ibrah. Ibrah, taking lesson. فَاعْتَبِرُوا يَا أُولِي الْأَبْصَارِ. That a smart individual is the one who learns a lesson from the wrongs of those that passed before them. Right? Our own wrongs, we also learn from that. But acumen and smarts is that someone else's wrongs, one person passes, you see he slips and falls over there. So the second person comes and does the same thing. What do you call it? Didn't you just see him? You didn't see what just happened right now? He slipped and fell on the ice. Why are you running here? So same thing. That the ummah before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us this is what happened, this is what they did, this is how they fared. They belied the messenger, this is what happened. These were the wrongs of such fraternity, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dealt with them in this manner. This is a wrong. So what do? You should take lesson from that. So here specifically, the priests and the ulama, the learned of the past, they are being spoken of, that إِنَّ كَثِيرًا مِنَ الْأَحْبَارِ وَالرُّهْبَانِ لَيَأْكُلُونَ أَمْوَالَ النَّاسِ بِالْبَاطِلِ. That many of them, not all of them, many of them. So also the adl and justice of the Quran Kareem, that where there is something which is wrong, then that's localized. And it's not made into, it's not generalized. If it's local, then it's kept local. Right? So if all of them did not commit this wrong, then it doesn't say all of them committed this wrong. كثير منهم, many of them did that. That means, that, what does that tell you? That many did, that some did not. لا يأكلون أموال الناس بالباطل. One wrong of theirs that's being pointed out is that they consume people's wealth by false means. Now, how does the scholar do that? By giving wrong opinions, knowingly, in order to satisfy others. If you satisfy others, what happens? They pay you. You do as they want, and they give you money for that, right? So those that are bought out, so to say, colloquially say, this so and so is bought out. So this is what the Quran is speaking of. In other places, the Quran says that they have purchased in exchange of the ayat of Allah ثَمَنًا قَلِيلًا. That it's not a good bargain anyways. Yes, maybe even if it's 1 million, even if it's 10 million, even if it's 1 billion. Why? Because that will come to an end. But what you did is you sold your deen. You sold what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from you. So this wrong is being spoken of. They don't fall into the same. What does that also tell you? That this does occur. This is human psyche. That people do try to bribe others, and people have knowledge as well. So both groups need to be aware. Those that are the ones that are administering those wrong, those pseudo verdicts, and those that are receiving, the general public as well. They also have to be aware of that. That who falls into which category, who's doing what. لا يأكلون أموال الناس بالباطل ويصدون عن سبيل الله. And they stop in this manner. They may have a garb of Islam. They may have a garb of this is for the sake of Allah. But in reality, they are only stopping and preventing from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now what causes this? What causes this? Why fall into this? The immense love for the things of this world. So the Quran Kareem says and addresses this, that وَالَّذِينَ يَكْنِزُونَ الذَّهَبَ الْفِضَّةِ. Those that hoard their desire for having more, of amassing, the want for having more wealth. This is what would cause such a heinous crime. So those that hoard ذهب الفضة, ذهب refers to gold, fidda means silver, meaning things of monetary value. It's not just that if you take crypto, then it's jais. Crypto is also not jais, if you're going to give the wrong verdict. Meaning that things which are going to, or things of monetary value, for that a person sells his deen, whether it be from the scholarly perspective or the one that's receiving it. Either way, this is something which will cause adhabun alim. This is going to lead to a punishment, a tormenting, a painful punishment. Now from here also, we understand the hukum, the law of zakah as well. Because وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَها فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Sabilillah here refers to zakah. وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَها فِي سَبِيلِ here refers to zakah. This is very important. There are hudud, there are boundaries to everything. Before the point, I'm going to make a point, and before that I want to give some preliminary points. You've been thinking, what are you doing for the last 3 minutes? So I'm still giving preliminary points. For this point, this one specifically. That there are boundaries for everything. As long as you're within the boundaries of something, then you are safe. Even if it means to encourage something which is good. Something which is good, that also has boundaries. Okay? So fundraising, for example, it's a good thing that a person is encouraging others towards giving towards the masjid, give for such and such cause, etc., etc., etc. However, there are boundaries to that as well. And part of those boundaries is that you cannot misquote ayat of the Quran Kareem. Okay? You cannot misquote the verses of the Quran or the hadith of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why? Just because you want someone to donate towards a certain cause. So sometimes what happens that some perhaps fundraisers go overboard and they quote such ayat and such verses and say that if you hoard this and don't spend in the path of Allah, فَبَشِّرْهُمْ بِعَذَابٍ. This is incorrect. If it's not a fard, an obligation upon a person to give towards a certain avenue, you cannot use such verses and such a hadith which tell of punishment. Something which is not a fard, which is not an obligation, you do not get an adhab for that. There is no, that's the very meaning of it, something being preferable, that it's optional, that there's no torment behind that. You do it, great. You don't do it, there's no punishment. It's not an obligation. Where it is an obligation, for that's why ulama say this refers to sadaqat wajiba. The foremost of it being zakah. That's the primary. The primary context of da'iyah is zakah, which is an obligation. So yes, a person does not discharge their zakah, then definitely فَبَشِّرْهُمْ بِعَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. There's a sarcasm in the ayah as well. Bashara means glad tidings. Meaning, why is the Quran Kareem using this literary style, if you want to call it? Because the person was very happy, right? That he's getting very joyful that I'm asking more, I'm taking more. You thought this led to your happiness. So the same thing is being used here. فَبَشِّرْهُمْ, here, the same happiness you had, let's see what happens. Why does the Quran Kareem hold such a consider this to be such a heinous crime? Because wealth that a person has is in fact not their own. It's something, as the Quran Kareem tells us in the very beginning, initial ayat, verses of Surah Al-Baqarah, وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. From the signs of people of taqwa, muttaqeen, is what? That they spend from that which we have given them as sustenance. That's the aqidah, that's the understanding. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that gave it to you. Now when He gave it to you and then He tells you this is something that needs to be 2.5% of this needs to go to such and such individuals, if He wanted, He could have made it 10%, 20%, 30%, because it was His. And He's the one that gave to you. If you give money to someone, tell them, okay, give X amount to so-and-so, give X amount to so-and-so, and the rest is yours. So that it's an obligation on that person to fulfill to carry it out the way you told them to do it. So the same thing over here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the one that gave us rizq, and He's the one that gave this money. And if He so ordained that such and such individuals or these avenues will be given a minimum 2.5%, such a small amount, then on top of that person said, no, I'm not going to fulfill this obligation. يَوْمَ يُحْمَى, what's one adab over here that the Quran Kareem highlights and details? يَوْمَ يُحْمَى عَلَيْهَا فِي نَارِ جَهَنَّمَ. The same money that a person hoarded and did not fulfill its obligation, the Quran Kareem is saying that same money will be heated in the fire of Jahannam. فَتُكْوَى بِهَا جِبَاهُمْ وَجُنُوبُهُم, and their foreheads, their sides, their back, meaning their bodies, will be branded with the same. This is an explicit form of adab. هَذَا مَا كَنَزْتُمْ لِأَنفُسِكُمْ. Again, it will be told to them verbally that this is what you hoarded. This is the result of hoarding when that which is not yours. See, because what that means is it was not yours. A person, when you give zakah, that amount which is to be given, that is not yours. That belongs to someone else. So taking someone else's right, this is the torment for that. هَذَا مَا كَنَزْتُمْ لِأَنفُسِكُمْ فَذُوقُوا مَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْنِزُونَ. So now you shall taste that which you hoarded. We make dua that Allah Ta'ala gives us the understanding of the Quran and Sunnah, and that He allows us to fulfill our obligations. Subhanallah.